I stepped out of the dental hygiene clinic in Portland at 6:30 that Tuesday evening, exhausted from scaling teeth all day. My shoulders ached from leaning over patients for 8 hours straight, and my feet throbbed in my sensible work shoes. I had just finished cleaning the teeth of a nervous teenager who kept flinching every time I approached with the scaler, making what should have been a 30-minute appointment stretch to nearly an hour. My phone buzzed as I unlocked my car door. Dad's name flashed across the screen. I hesitated before answering, knowing that calls from my parents rarely brought good news these days. "Leah, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying that particular cheerfulness that always made me suspicious. It was the tone he used when he wanted something or when he was about to deliver news he knew I wouldn't like. "Just wanted to confirm you got the invitation for your brother's wedding. It's next Saturday." I froze with one foot inside the car, my bag sliding off my shoulder. "Next Saturday? Dad, that's only 9 days away. Why didn't anyone tell me sooner? I haven't received any invitation." "We sent you the invitation weeks ago, honey. Must have gotten lost in the mail. You know how unreliable the postal service is these days." Something about his tone felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was my little brother getting married. Despite our complicated family dynamics and the distance that had grown between us over the years, I wanted to be there for him. Tristan was 23, impulsive, and had been dating his girlfriend Veronica for barely 8 months. I had serious reservations about the rushed timeline, but I kept them to myself. It wasn't my place to judge his decisions. "Of course I'll be there," I said, forcing warmth into my voice despite the anxiety already building in my chest. "I'm thrilled for him. Really thrilled. Do you need me to help with anything? I can take time off work if you need extra hands for setup or decorations." No. Everything's arranged. Your mother has been planning this for months. It's all under control. Just show up looking beautiful. Your mother has the venue details in the schedule. I'll text them to you tonight before I go to bed." "Sounds good. Tell Tristan I can't wait to celebrate with him. Tell him to call me if he needs anything at all." "Will do, sweetheart. Love you." "Love you too, Dad." I drove home to my apartment, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and unease. My relationship with my parents had been strained since I bought my lake cabin 2 years ago. They thought I was wasting money on property instead of settling down and finding a husband like Tristan was doing. Never mind that I worked 60-hour weeks as a dental hygienist and had saved every dollar through my 20s, while Tristan bounced between jobs and borrowed money from them constantly. Never mind that I was building a career and financial independence while he still asked them for rent money at 23. The lake cabin was my sanctuary, my escape, my proof that I could build something meaningful for myself. I had purchased it at 23 with money I inherited from my grandmother, the only family member who truly understood me. Grandma Ruth had been an independent woman who never married, who traveled the world and built her own business in an era when women were expected to be homemakers. She left me $50,000 when she died, with a note that said, "Build something that makes you happy, not something that makes others comfortable." The property sat 3 hours north of Portland, nestled between towering pines with a private dock extending into crystal-clear water. The cabin itself was small but perfectly formed, with 2 bedrooms, a cozy living area with a stone fireplace, and a deck that wrapped around 3 sides of the structure. I spent every free weekend there, away from family drama and the constant comparisons to my younger brother. That evening, I started shopping online for a wedding gift. I scrolled through registry after registry, finally settling on an expensive set of kitchen appliances that I knew Veronica loved to cook. She had mentioned wanting a high-end stand mixer and food processor at a family dinner months ago. The total came to $600, which made me wince, but family was family. I wanted to show support, even if the wedding felt rushed, and even if I had doubts about whether they were ready for marriage. Thursday arrived without the promised venue details. I checked my phone repeatedly throughout my shift at the clinic, between patients, during lunch, during my afternoon break. Nothing. Finally, during my drive home, I called my mother. "Mom, Dad was supposed to send me information about Tristan's wedding. I need to know where to go, what time to arrive, whether there's a dress code. I want to make sure I'm not late." Silence stretched across the line, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Oh, Leah, we need to talk about that." My stomach dropped. Those words never preceded good news. "Talk about what?" "Well, there was a small misunderstanding. Your father gave you the wrong date." I gripped the phone tighter, nearly swerving into the next lane. "What do you mean, wrong date? The wedding is next Saturday, isn't it? That's what Dad said." "Actually," Mom said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, "it happened yesterday, Wednesday afternoon. It was a beautiful ceremony." Veronica looked absolutely stunning in her dress. The flowers were gorgeous. Everyone had such a wonderful time. The words hit me like a physical blow. I pulled into a parking lot and stopped the car, unable to drive while processing what I was hearing. "It happened yesterday? You're telling me my brother got married yesterday, and nobody thought to correct the date Dad gave me? Nobody thought to call me and say there was a mistake?" "We didn't want to upset you, honey. These things happen. Dates get mixed up, wires get crossed. It's not the end of the world." "These things happen?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. "You deliberately gave me the wrong date so I would miss my own brother's wedding. This wasn't a mix-up. This was intentional." "Don't be dramatic, Leah. It was a small ceremony anyway. Very intimate. Just close family and a few friends. You know how Tristan feels about big crowds and excessive fuss. He wanted something simple and meaningful. I am close family. I'm his sister. I'm his only sister. Tristan wanted to keep it small. You know how he is. Besides, you've been so distant lately, always up at that cabin of yours. We didn't think you'd want to take time away from your little retreat. And honestly, you and Veronica have never really clicked. We thought it might be awkward for everyone." I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, trying to find words for the betrayal I felt. "That's not the point. You lied to me. You let me believe I would be there. Let me buy an expensive gift. Let me get excited about celebrating with my brother, and you knew the entire time that the wedding already happened. You looked me in the eye, metaphorically speaking, and lied. Well, they'll still appreciate the gift. You can bring it to the next family dinner. We're having everyone over in 2 weeks to look at wedding photos. So I'm invited to look at photos of an event I was deliberately excluded from? How thoughtful. There's no need for sarcasm, Leah. We're trying to include you now." I ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back. My hands shook as I set the phone down on the passenger seat. This wasn't just thoughtlessness or poor communication. This was deliberate, calculated. They had planned this together, my mother and father, probably with Tristan's knowledge and consent. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes, watching people come and go from the grocery store, living their normal lives while mine felt like it was crumbling. Finally, I drove home and immediately opened my laptop. I checked my email thoroughly, searching through my inbox, spam folder, trash, every folder I had. There was no wedding invitation. Not in my email, not anywhere. They had never sent one. The story about the invitation getting lost in the mail was a complete fabrication. I pulled up my text messages with Tristan. The last message was from 3 weeks ago, a casual exchange about a basketball game we had both watched. Nothing about a wedding. Nothing about getting married soon. Nothing that indicated he wanted me there for the biggest day of his life so far. The following days passed in a blur of anger and hurt. I threw myself into work, cleaning teeth with mechanical precision while my mind replayed every conversation, every interaction, looking for clues I had missed. I analyzed my father's cheerful tone when he called, my mother's rehearsed explanation. They had planned this together. They had sat down and decided that I didn't deserve to be at my own brother's wedding. I didn't call Tristan. Part of me wanted to hear his explanation, to know if he was complicit in this betrayal or simply went along with our parents' scheme because it was easier than standing up to them. But the larger part of me already knew the answer. Tristan had always been their favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong despite his irresponsibility and financial dependence on them. I was the responsible one, the boring one, the daughter who chose stability over excitement, career over marriage, independence over family approval. My coworker Jasmine noticed my mood on Friday. We were restocking supplies in the hygiene room between patients when she asked if everything was okay. Family stuff, I said, not wanting to elaborate while at work. The wedding you mentioned last week? Your brother's wedding? I had told her earlier in the week that I was excited about Tristan's upcoming wedding, that I had bought an expensive gift, that I was looking forward to celebrating with family despite our complications. Now I had to explain that it had already happened without me. Jasmine listened with growing outrage as I told her the whole story. "That's absolutely insane," she said when I finished, her voice rising with indignation. "Who does that to their own daughter? Who lies about something that important? My parents, apparently, and my brother went along with it. What are you going to do?" "Nothing. What can I do? It's done. The wedding happened. I can't go back in time and make them include me. I can't force them to care about my feelings." Jasmine shook her head firmly. "You're nicer than me. Way nicer. If my family did something like that to me, I would make them regret it somehow. I would find a way to show them that actions have consequences." Her words stuck with me throughout the day and into the evening, though I dismissed them at the time. I wasn't the vengeful type. I was the person who kept the peace, who swallowed disappointment and moved forward, who prioritized family harmony over personal feelings. But as days turned into weeks, the anger didn't fade. It didn't soften or transform into acceptance. Instead, it crystallized into something harder, colder, more permanent. 4 weeks after the wedding I had been excluded from, my phone rang on a Wednesday evening. I was at home, eating leftover Thai food and watching a documentary about ocean conservation, trying to enjoy my quiet evening alone. Mom's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but morbid curiosity got the better of me. What could they possibly want now? "Leah, honey, I hope you're not still upset about the wedding misunderstanding," she began, her tone artificially bright. Misunderstanding. As if accidentally giving me the wrong time for a dental appointment and deliberately lying about my brother's wedding were equivalent. As if this was some innocent mistake instead of a calculated exclusion. "What do you want, Mom?" "Well, I'm calling because we need a favor. A big favor, actually. A really important one that would mean so much to the whole family." I waited, saying nothing, refusing to make this easy for her. "Your father and I planned a special trip for our anniversary. It's our 35th wedding anniversary next month, which is a huge milestone, and we booked this incredible resort in the Bahamas. 2 full weeks, all-inclusive, everything paid for. We leave on the 15th of next month. It's going to be absolutely wonderful." "Congratulations," I said flatly, my voice devoid of emotion. "The thing is, Tristan and Veronica need a place to stay while we're gone. Their apartment building is being fumigated for termites, and they have nowhere to go for 2 full weeks. The fumigation company is very thorough, and they can't stay in the building at all during the process. We were hoping they could use your lake cabin. It would be perfect for them. Peaceful, romantic, a nice little newlywed getaway." The audacity knocked the breath out of me. I set down my container of pad thai, no longer hungry. They excluded me from my brother's wedding, never truly apologized, treated me like I was being unreasonable for being hurt, and now wanted to use the cabin they had spent 2 years criticizing me for buying. The cabin they called a waste of money, an irresponsible purchase, a sign that I wasn't serious about my future. "You want them to stay at my cabin?" I repeated slowly, making sure I understood correctly. Yes, it would be perfect for them. They need to get away anyway. Newlywed time. You know how important that is. Quality time together without distractions. And your cabin is just sitting there empty most of the time anyway. It's not like you're using it every single day. It would really help us out. And it would be such a nice gift for the newlyweds. Help you out? This isn't your property, Mom. It's mine. I bought it with my own money Grandma Ruth left specifically to me. I know that, sweetie. That's why I'm asking nicely. I'm not demanding anything. I'm simply requesting a favor. Family helps family, right? That's what families do. They support each other in times of need. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Family helps family. Where was that sentiment when they were planning to exclude me from the wedding? Where was family support when I was buying the cabin and they told me I was making a huge mistake? Where was family loyalty when they lied to my face about the wedding date? I'll think about it, I said, unwilling to commit to anything in the moment. Well, don't think too long. We need to know soon so we can make other arrangements if necessary. Tristan needs to give his landlord an answer about where they'll be staying during the fumigation. Time is kind of critical here. I said I'll let you know. Leah, honey, I really think you should say yes. It would go a long way toward healing the family rift. Show everyone that you're willing to move past the wedding thing and be part of the family again. I'll let you know, I repeated firmly, then ended the call. I sat staring at my apartment wall, my documentary forgotten, my food growing cold. The cabin they had mocked, the purchase they had called frivolous and irresponsible, was suddenly valuable to them when they needed something. They wanted me to hand over my keys, my sanctuary, my personal space to the people who had deliberately hurt me. 2 days later, Dad called. His approach was different from Mom's, more direct and less artificially sweet. Leah, your mother mentioned the cabin situation. I know things have been tense between us lately, but this would really mean a lot to your brother. Tristan's struggling with money right now, and a hotel for 2 weeks would absolutely break his budget. You know how expensive hotels are these days, especially for 2 weeks. They'd need to spend thousands of dollars they don't have. Maybe he should have thought about budgeting before having an expensive wedding, I said coldly. That's not fair, Leah. He's young. He's just starting out in life. We all make financial mistakes when we're starting out. You can't hold that against him. Besides, we helped pay for the wedding. It was important to us to give him a beautiful start to his marriage. I didn't make those mistakes. I saved my money carefully and bought property that you all ridiculed me for purchasing. Property that suddenly seems very useful to you now. Dad's voice hardened, losing the conciliatory tone. Don't be petty, Leah. This is your brother we're talking about. Your own flesh and blood, your family. Are you really going to hold a grudge over a simple miscommunication about a wedding date? Are you really that petty and vindictive? It wasn't a miscommunication. You lied to me. Both of you lied to my face. You deliberately gave me the wrong date so I would miss my own brother's wedding. And now you want a favor. Now you want me to hand over my property like nothing happened. We're asking you to be the bigger person here, to show some maturity and grace and family loyalty, to prove that you're not the selfish person you're acting like right now. Something inside me snapped. A cord that had been stretched tight for years finally broke. No. No what? No. They absolutely cannot use the cabin. Hell no, actually. Find somewhere else for them to stay. Leah, don't be ridiculous. You're not even using it right now. You're sitting in your apartment in Portland while that cabin sits empty 3 hours away. How does it hurt you to let them stay there? That doesn't matter. It's mine. I decide who stays there. I decide who gets access to my property, and I decide that Tristan and Veronica will not be staying there. Not for 2 weeks, not for 2 days, not for 2 hours. You're being incredibly selfish. Unbelievably selfish. I'm ashamed that I raised someone who would treat family this way. Good. Maybe it's time I started being selfish instead of always accommodating everyone else's needs while mine get completely ignored. Maybe it's time I protected my own interests instead of sacrificing myself to keep others comfortable. This is about the wedding, isn't it? You're punishing your brother because you're jealous that he got married before you. You're jealous that he found someone and you're still alone. The accusation was so absurd, so divorced from reality, that I actually laughed. Jealous? I'm not jealous, Dad. I'm hurt that my family deliberately excluded me from a major life event and lied about it. I'm angry that you're now trying to manipulate me into giving you access to my property by calling me selfish and petty. There's a huge difference between jealousy and justifiable anger at being mistreated. Well, if that's how you feel, don't expect us to go out of our way for you in the future. Don't expect us to include you in family events or celebrations. Don't expect us to treat you like family when you won't act like family. I haven't expected that for years, Dad. I stopped expecting fair treatment from you and Mom a long time ago. Goodbye. I hung up and immediately blocked both my parents' numbers. The peace was immediate and profound. No more guilt-tripping calls. No more manipulation disguised as concern. No more being made to feel like the villain for having normal human reactions to being mistreated. Tristan started texting me 3 days later. The messages came rapid fire, one after another, filling my phone with notifications. Each message was long, full of explanations about the apartment fumigation, about how difficult it was to find affordable short-term housing in Portland, about how much stress Veronica was under. He assured me repeatedly that they would take perfect care of the cabin, wouldn't disturb anything, would leave it cleaner than they found it. He promised they would respect my space, follow any rules I set, even pay me rent if that would make me more comfortable. I responded with 2 words. Absolutely not. His reply came immediately. Come on, Leah. Don't punish Veronica for Mom and Dad's mistakes. She had nothing to do with the wedding thing. She actually wanted you there. She kept asking Mom about you and when you were arriving. But you did have something to do with it. You went along with their plan to exclude me. You could have called me yourself and invited me regardless of what they wanted. And I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply declining to let people who hurt me use my property. Find a hotel, find an Airbnb, find somewhere else. We can't afford a hotel for 2 weeks. Do you have any idea how expensive that would be? We're talking thousands of dollars we don't have. Not my problem, Tristan. You're an adult. Figure it out. The texts kept coming throughout the day. Tristan alternated between apologies, guilt trips, and appeals to family loyalty. He reminded me of times he had helped me when we were kids, brought up family holidays we had shared, tried every angle he could think of to change my mind. I stopped responding after the 5th message, letting him send his pleas into the void. Then Veronica started texting. Her messages were gentler, more genuinely apologetic than Tristan's, but the answer remained the same. She explained that she had assumed I was invited to the wedding, that she only learned later that I hadn't been there, that she felt terrible about the whole situation. She said she understood if I was angry, that she would be angry too, but asked if I could separate my feelings about the wedding from this current situation. I wanted to feel sympathy for her. She seemed genuinely kind, genuinely sorry, but sympathy wasn't enough to make me compromise my boundaries. I'm sorry you're in a difficult situation, but my answer is no. She tried twice more, then stopped. The silence lasted 2 days before a new wave of pressure began. My Aunt Patricia called. Then my mother's friend Helen. Then someone from their church whose name I barely recognized. Each call followed the same pattern. They had heard I was being difficult about letting Tristan use the cabin. They wanted to understand my side of the story. They hoped we could all work this out like adults, and ultimately, could I please just reconsider? I explained the wedding situation to each of them. Some were sympathetic, understanding why I felt hurt and betrayed. Others dismissed it as a misunderstanding that I should be over by now. None of them changed my mind. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. On the morning of the 15th, the day my parents were supposed to leave for the Bahamas, someone knocked on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw my mother standing there, her face blotchy and red. I debated not opening the door, but curiosity, and perhaps some remaining thread of familial obligation, made me turn the lock. "Please, Leah," she said the moment the door opened, tears streaming down her face. "Please let them use the cabin. Tristan is desperate. They've been staying in a terrible motel on the outskirts of town, and it's costing them money they don't have. The room smells like cigarettes and mildew. Your father and I are leaving for the airport in 3 hours, and I can't enjoy this trip knowing my son is suffering. I can't relax knowing this family is falling apart." "Then cancel your trip," I said coldly, unmoved by the tears I suspected were partially theatrical. "Stay home and help him yourselves. Let him stay in your house while you're gone." "We can't do that. The house is being shown to potential buyers while we're away. We're trying to sell it, and we can't have people living there during showings, and we can't cancel the trip. It's completely non-refundable. We'd lose thousands of dollars." "Sounds like a personal problem. Sounds like poor planning on your part. When did you become so heartless?" The tears stopped as quickly as they had started, replaced by cold anger. Her face transformed from grief to fury in an instant. "I raised you better than this. I taught you about family and loyalty and compassion and helping others in need. You taught me that family treats each other terribly and expects forgiveness without any real accountability. You taught me that my feelings don't matter as long as everyone else is comfortable. You taught me that I should sacrifice my own needs and boundaries to make things easier for you. Well, I learned the lesson. I learned it very well. Now you get to live with the consequences of what you taught me. If you don't give them those keys right now, don't bother coming to any more family events. Don't bother calling. Don't bother showing up for holidays. You'll be dead to us. Completely dead. You'll have no family." "I'm already dead to you, Mom. You proved that when you excluded me from my brother's wedding and then lied about it to my face. You made your choice about what I mean to this family. Now I'm making mine." She left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame and make my neighbor's dog start barking. I stood in my apartment, shaking, but resolute. Let them cut me off. Let them make me the villain in their story. Let them tell everyone I was cruel and heartless. I was done being the family doormat, done sacrificing my peace for their convenience. That evening, I drove to the lake cabin. I needed to be there, to remind myself why I had drawn this line in the sand, why this boundary mattered. The 3-hour drive through winding mountain roads calmed my nerves. By the time I arrived and saw the sun setting over the water, casting everything in shades of gold and amber, the tension in my shoulders had begun to ease. I walked through the cabin slowly, touching the furniture I had chosen piece by piece, looking at the photos I had framed of places I had traveled, standing on the deck I had helped a contractor build 2 summers ago. This place was mine, not theirs. Mine. I had built it with money from the one family member who truly understood me, who wanted me to be happy rather than obedient. I spent the weekend at the cabin, hiking the trails around the property and kayaking on the still water. Saturday afternoon, I was reading a mystery novel on the deck when I heard a car engine in the distance. I looked up, my stomach sinking, as a vehicle pulled into my gravel driveway. Tristan and Veronica emerged from their car. Tristan had something in his hand that glinted in the sunlight. A key. I stood up, my book falling forgotten to the deck, as they parked and got out of the car. "What are you doing here?" I called out, my voice sharp. "Mom gave me her spare key," Tristan said, walking toward the cabin with false confidence. "The one she had made a few years ago when you first bought this place. We're staying here for the next 2 weeks whether you like it or not. You've been unreasonable long enough. You break into my property and I'll call the police. I'll have you arrested for trespassing." "It's not breaking in if we have a key," Veronica said, though she looked uncomfortable with the whole situation. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Your parents said it would be fine. They said you'd come around once you had time to think about it. My parents don't own this cabin. They have no right to give you permission to be here. I own it. I bought it. My name is on the deed, and I never gave anyone permission to be here." Tristan reached the steps leading up to the deck. "Come on, Leah. We drove 3 hours. We packed all our stuff. We have nowhere else to go. Mom and Dad are already on their plane to the Bahamas. Just let us stay. You won't even be here most of the time anyway. You'll be at work in Portland." "That's not the point. The point is that you don't get to override my decision just because Mom gave you a key. She had no right to give you in the first place. The point is that my boundaries matter even when they're inconvenient for you. So you're really going to do this? You're really going to make us turn around and drive 3 hours back to Portland?" "Yes, leave. Right now. Immediately." Veronica touched Tristan's arm. "Maybe we should just go. This feels wrong. She's saying no. We should respect that." "We're not going anywhere," Tristan said stubbornly, his jaw set in that familiar expression of determination I remembered from childhood. "We need this place, and she's being completely ridiculous and vindictive." I pulled out my phone, my hand steady despite my racing heart. "Leave right now, or I'm calling the police and reporting a trespassing. I'll show them the property deed with my name on it. I'll show them the text where I explicitly denied you permission to be here. I'll press charges. You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't actually call the cops on your own brother. Try me, test me, see what happens." We stared at each other for a long moment that seemed to stretch into infinity. I kept my phone raised, finger hovering over the emergency call button, my expression unwavering. Finally, Veronica pulled Tristan back toward their car more forcefully. "This isn't over," Tristan called out as they got back into their vehicle. "Mom and Dad are going to hear about this. They're going to hear about how you threatened to have your own brother arrested. Everyone is going to know what kind of person you really are." "Good. Tell them. Tell everyone. Make sure you mention the part where you tried to use a key you had no right to have to access property you weren't given permission to enter. Tell them the whole story." They drove away, gravel spitting from their tires, leaving dust hanging in the air. I stood on the deck until their car disappeared down the winding road, then sat down hard on the nearest chair. My hands were shaking now that the confrontation was over. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jolt awake, afraid they had come back, afraid they would try to break in through a window or force their way inside. At sunrise, I called a locksmith in the nearest town, a small mountain community 30 minutes away. I paid extra for same-day service, not wanting to wait even one more day. By noon, the cabin had brand new locks on every door. I had the only set of keys, which I put on a carabiner that I attached to my keychain. No one else would have access. Not my parents, not my brother, not anyone unless I explicitly gave them permission. I also drove to the hardware store and bought security cameras. I spent the afternoon installing them at the front door, back door, and driveway entrance. If anyone tried to access the property without permission, I would know immediately and have video evidence. I could call the police with proof of attempted trespass. The paranoia felt justified when I checked the cameras the following evening from my apartment in Portland and saw Tristan's car pull up to the cabin again. This time, he was alone, without Veronica. I watched on my phone app as he tried his key, discovered it didn't work, and then walked around the entire cabin trying every window. All locked. I had made sure of it. He stood in the driveway for several minutes, staring at the cabin with his hands on his hips, clearly frustrated and angry. Then he tried the doors again, rattling the handles as if force would somehow make them open. Finally, he kicked the front door, leaving a scuff mark on the wood that made me wince. But he left without gaining entry. I saved all the video footage, downloading it to my computer and backing it up to cloud storage. Evidence, documentation, proof of exactly what they were willing to do to get what they wanted. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived at my apartment via certified mail. I signed for it with a sense of dread. knowing it couldn't be anything good. Inside was a letter from a lawyer representing my parents. The legal letterhead looked official and intimidating, exactly as intended. The letter claimed that my parents had a verbal agreement with me that allowed family members to use the cabin for vacations and emergency situations. It stated that I was in breach of this agreement by denying Tristan access. It demanded that I provide access to Tristan and Veronica immediately, or face a lawsuit for breach of contract and damages related to the hotel costs they had incurred while unable to use the cabin they claimed I had promised them access to. I read the letter 3 times, my anger growing with each reading. Verbal agreement. They were claiming we had an agreement that had never existed, that had never even been discussed. They were threatening legal action based on complete fabrication. I called my own lawyer immediately. Bethany had helped me with the cabin purchase 2 years ago, handling all the paperwork and making sure everything was properly in my name. She was in her 40s, sharp and no nonsense, with a reputation for not backing down from intimidation tactics. "Send me the letter," she said, after I explained the situation. "Forward it to my email right now while we're on the phone." I did, listening to her keyboard clicking as she read it. "They have absolutely no case," Bethany said firmly. "Zero. It's your property. You have absolute right to deny access to anyone, family or not. This verbal agreement they're claiming doesn't exist, and even if it did, verbal agreements about property access are nearly impossible to enforce. The spare key situation could actually work in your favor if you want to pursue charges for attempted unauthorized entry. I don't want to pursue charges against my brother. I just want them to leave me alone. Then I'll send them a letter making it crystal clear that they have no legal standing, that any further harassment will result in a restraining order, and that their lawyer should be ashamed of sending such a frivolous threat. I'll also mention the video evidence you have of attempted unauthorized access, which could constitute criminal trespass. That should shut them down pretty quickly. Do it. Send it today if possible. Consider it done. And Leah, don't let them intimidate you. You're completely in the right here. What they're doing is harassment, pure and simple." Bethany's letter must have been effective because the harassment stopped immediately. No more calls, no more texts, no more surprise visits. The silence was both relieving and unsettling. I kept waiting for the next attack, the next manipulation tactic, the next person they would recruit to pressure me. But nothing came. My parents returned from their Bahamas trip, and I heard nothing from them. Tristan stopped trying to contact me entirely. It was like I had been erased from the family, deleted from their lives as if I had never existed. Part of me grieved. Despite everything, despite all the hurt and manipulation and betrayal, they were still my family. I had grown up with these people, shared holidays and birthdays and ordinary moments. Cutting them off meant losing all of that history, all those connections, all those shared memories. But a larger part of me felt free. No more walking on eggshells, worrying about saying the wrong thing or making them angry. No more bracing for criticism disguised as concern. No more being the scapegoat for family dysfunction. I could breathe without feeling like I was suffocating under their expectations. 3 months passed. I threw myself into my work at the dental clinic, taking on extra shifts when other hygienists needed time off. I spent every weekend at the cabin, sometimes alone and sometimes with Jasmine, who had become one of my closest friends. We would kayak and hike during the day, then sit by the fire pit in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. "You seem happier," Jasmine observed one Saturday night in early November as we roasted marshmallows under a sky full of stars. "More relaxed. More like yourself." "I feel lighter," I admitted, watching flames dance in the fire pit. Like I've been carrying this enormous weight I didn't even realize was there, and now it's gone. I can just exist without constantly worrying about whether I'm disappointing someone or failing to meet their expectations. "No regrets about standing your ground?" "None. Not a single one. I should have done it years ago. I should have set boundaries with them a long time ago, instead of always trying to be the good daughter who never caused problems." Better late than never. In early November, I received an unexpected email from Veronica. The subject line read simply, "I'm sorry." I debated deleting it without reading, letting it disappear into the digital void. But curiosity won out over caution. "Leah, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I wouldn't blame you at all if you deleted this without reading. But I needed to reach out. I needed to tell you that what your parents did to you was wrong. What Tristan and I went along with was wrong. I've been thinking about it constantly, especially now that I'm seeing how your family operates up close, seeing the patterns of behavior that you must have lived with your whole life. They exclude you from everything, talk about you behind your back like you're the problem, and then act shocked and hurt when you react. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I let them use me as part of their manipulation. You deserved better. You deserve better now. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking for anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what they did and are still doing. And it was cruel. It is cruel." I read the email 3 times, each word sinking in slowly. It was the first genuine apology I had received from anyone in my family. Not an excuse, not a justification, just acknowledgement and remorse. Not, "I'm sorry you felt hurt," or, "I'm sorry there was a misunderstanding," but a real apology that took ownership of wrongdoing. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to process it, to decide what it meant to me. For now, I saved it in a folder labeled "Important" and let it sit. Maybe someday I would be ready to accept the apology and have a conversation with Veronica. Maybe someday I would be ready to forgive. But that day wasn't today. December arrived with the first significant snow. The lake froze over gradually, ice forming at the edges first, and then creeping toward the center. The cabin transformed into a winter wonderland, with icicles hanging from the eaves and snow covering the deck railing like frosting. I spent Christmas there alone, cooking a small turkey breast for myself, watching classic movies by the fireplace, reading books I had been meaning to get to for months. It was the most peaceful Christmas I could remember. No forced cheerfulness, no uncomfortable conversations, no walking on eggshells around sensitive family topics. Just me, the cabin, and the quiet beauty of winter in the mountains. On New Year's Eve, I sat on the deck bundled in my warmest coat and blankets, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. My phone was inside, turned off. No one would call anyway. The family I had been born into had made their choice when they excluded me from that wedding, and I had made mine when I refused to let them use me anymore. At midnight, I raised a glass of champagne to the frozen lake and the star-filled sky. I toasted to new beginnings, to boundaries, to choosing myself instead of sacrificing myself to keep others comfortable, to freedom from toxic expectations, to peace. The new year stretched ahead, full of possibility. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I had my work, my friends, my sanctuary. I had built a life that was mine, authentic and true to who I was, rather than who my family wanted me to be. February brought an unexpected development. Jasmine mentioned during our lunch break at the clinic that her sister, who worked in real estate in Portland, had heard interesting gossip about a property dispute. Apparently there's a couple trying to sell their house, but they're having major issues with the title, Jasmine said, dipping a carrot stick in hummus. Something about claiming property rights to their daughter's cabin up north, trying to use it to inflate their property value. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. What? Say that again. Yeah, crazy, right? They told potential buyers they owned a vacation property as part of their real estate portfolio, but it turns out the daughter owns it outright and they have no legal claim whatsoever. The buyers walked away when they discovered the misrepresentation, and now the couple can't sell their house because they've completely destroyed their credibility. Word spreads fast in the real estate community. Jasmine, I think you're talking about my parents. Her eyes widened dramatically. No way. Are you serious? Your parents tried to claim they owned your cabin? I pulled out my phone and started searching public property records, my hands shaking slightly. Sure enough, my parents had listed their house for sale 6 weeks ago. The listing had been taken down and relisted twice, with the price dropping significantly each time. The current price was $30,000 less than their original asking price. They tried to claim partial ownership of my cabin, I said slowly, processing the information as I spoke. They actually tried to include it in their real estate portfolio to make their property holdings seem more valuable to potential buyers. That's fraud, isn't it? Like actual legal fraud? It's definitely something illegal. Misrepresentation at minimum. I called Bethany as soon as my lunch break ended, stepping outside the clinic into the cold February air. She listened to my explanation and asked me to send her the property listings and any documentation I had about the cabin ownership. "This is serious, Leah. Really serious," she said, her tone grave. "If they represented to buyers that they had ownership interest in property they don't actually own, that's fraudulent misrepresentation. The buyers could potentially sue them for wasting their time and for any costs incurred during the failed transaction. At minimum, it's destroyed their credibility in any property transaction going forward. No buyer will trust them now, and no real estate agent will want to work with them. What should I do? Honestly, nothing. Don't reach out, don't engage. Don't give them any opportunity to claim you're interfering with their business. Just document everything. Save those listings. Take screenshots with dates visible. Keep records. If they try to come after you again or make any more claims about the cabin, we'll have a clear pattern of attempted fraud. But let them dig their own hole. They're doing a fine job of that without any help from you." I spent the evening researching, diving deep into public records and real estate listings. My parents had apparently been trying to downsize for months, wanting to move to a smaller house closer to Tristan's apartment. They wanted something more manageable, easier to maintain in their 60s, but without being able to sell their current house at anywhere near the price they needed, they were stuck. The irony was delicious and poetic. They had tried to use my cabin to benefit themselves, going so far as to commit fraud by misrepresenting ownership, and now it had backfired spectacularly. Their greed and entitlement had consequences they couldn't manipulate or lie their way out of. 2 weeks later, Tristan called from yet another different number. I had stopped blocking numbers because they kept finding new ones, and I was curious about what approach they would try next. "Did you know Mom and Dad can't sell their house because of you?" He didn't bother with pleasantries or a greeting. His voice was tight with anger. Because of me? Or because they lied to potential buyers about owning property that isn't theirs? Because they committed fraud by misrepresenting their assets? They were just trying to show the full family assets. They were trying to show that our family has valuable property investments. The cabin isn't a family asset, Tristan. It's my personal asset, my individual property. They have exactly zero ownership, zero claim, zero right to represent it as theirs in any way. What they did was fraud. Actual, literal, prosecutable fraud. You could fix this whole mess. You could talk to the real estate agents and tell them it was just a misunderstanding. You could smooth things over. It wasn't a misunderstanding. They deliberately misrepresented property ownership to inflate their apparent worth. That's fraud, and I'm not going to help them cover it up or minimize it. That's on them, not me. So you're just going to let them suffer? You're going to let them lose their house because they can't sell it. I'm going to let them experience the natural consequences of their own dishonest actions. There's a difference between causing harm and simply not preventing consequences. They chose to lie. They chose to commit fraud. Now they get to deal with what happens when you lie and commit fraud. You've changed, Leah. You used to be kind. You used to care about family. I used to be a doormat who let people walk all over me because I was afraid of conflict. I've changed. You're right about that. But not in the way you think. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat back, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Not the bitter satisfaction of revenge plotted and executed, but the clean satisfaction of watching karma work its magic. I hadn't done anything to hurt them. I had simply refused to be used, refused to be manipulated, refused to bail them out of consequences they had created entirely themselves. In April, spring arrived with explosive color. Wildflowers bloomed along the hiking trails near the cabin, and the ice on the lake melted away. I spent a long weekend there, opening all the windows to air out the winter staleness, cleaning and organizing, preparing for summer. On Saturday afternoon, I was sweeping the deck when a car pulled into the driveway. I tensed, expecting Tristan or my parents. Instead, Veronica got out, alone. "Please don't run," she called out quickly, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to fight or pressure you or ask for anything. I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking for." Against my better judgment, I set down the broom and walked to the edge of the deck. 5 minutes. "Tristan and I are getting divorced," she said without any preamble or build-up. I hadn't expected that news. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It's absolutely the right decision. Living with him, seeing how he treats people, how your whole family operates up close and personal. I can't do it anymore. I can't be part of that dysfunction. The wedding thing was bad enough, but watching them try to manipulate and use you over this cabin showed me exactly who they really are. Who Tristan really is. Why are you telling me this, Veronica? Because I want you to know that you were right. About all of it. About every single thing. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Didn't stand up for you when I should have. Your mother called me last week and asked me to convince you to sign some kind of letter giving them permission to use the cabin. She actually offered me money. $2,000 if I could change your mind. What did you say to her? I told her that my marriage was already over, that I was filing for divorce, and that maybe if she had raised her son to be honest and kind instead of entitled and manipulative, things would be different. Then I hung up on her. A small smile tugged at my lips despite everything. Good for you. I also wanted to give you this. She pulled an envelope from her purse and held it out. It's everything I know about their financial situation. Bank statements Tristan left lying around the apartment. Conversations I overheard when they didn't know I was listening. Emails I saw on his laptop. I thought you should know exactly what you're dealing with, what they're capable of. I took the envelope carefully, feeling its weight. Thank you for this. I really am sorry, Leah, for all of it, for not standing up for you at the wedding, for going along with their manipulation, for not seeing who they were until it was too late. I believe you. And I genuinely hope things work out better for you going forward. You deserve better than what you got with this family. After she drove away, I sat on the deck and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were copies of bank statements showing negative balances and overdraft fees, credit card bills with balances in the tens of thousands, and email printouts discussing debt consolidation and loan applications. My parents were drowning financially. They had taken out a second mortgage on their house to pay for Tristan's elaborate wedding, maxed out 3 separate credit cards buying furniture and gifts for the newlyweds, and were 3 months behind on their car payments. They needed to sell the house not just to downsize for convenience, but to avoid foreclosure. They were desperate, cornered by debt they had created through years of living beyond their means and enabling Tristan's irresponsible spending habits. Suddenly, everything made sense with crystalline clarity. The desperate attempts to use the cabin, the fraudulent claims to buyers, the constant pressure and manipulation. They weren't just being entitled or thoughtless. They were financially desperate and had seen my property as a potential lifeline, a way to either boost their credibility with buyers or potentially claim some kind of financial interest they could leverage. I didn't use the information immediately. I simply filed it away, knowing that knowledge was power. But in June, when my parents made one final attempt to contact me through their church pastor, I decided enough was enough. The pastor, a gentleman named Reverend Thomas, whom I vaguely remembered from childhood Sunday services, called and asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious about what angle they were trying now. We met at a quiet coffee shop on a Wednesday afternoon. Reverend Thomas was in his 60s, with kind eyes and a soft voice. "Your parents are going through a tremendously difficult time," he began after we had our drinks. "They're facing financial hardship, family estrangement, and they're struggling with deep feelings of regret and loss." "Did they tell you why we're estranged?" I asked directly. "They mentioned there was a disagreement about property and some unfortunate timing with your brother's wedding. That's one way to describe deliberately excluding me from a major family event by lying about the date, then attempting to fraudulently claim ownership of my property, and then harassing me for months when I refused to let them use it." His expression shifted subtly, surprise and concern replacing his pastoral neutrality. I didn't hear it explained quite that way. I spent 20 minutes telling him the complete story, holding nothing back. I showed him documentation, the lawyer's letters, the property records showing their fraudulent claims, the security camera footage of attempted unauthorized entry, everything. When I finished, Reverend Thomas sat back in his chair, looking genuinely troubled. "I had absolutely no idea the situation was this severe and complicated," he admitted. "Your parents presented it to me as a simple family dispute over sharing resources, with some hurt feelings about a miscommunication. They're very skilled at spinning narratives to make themselves look reasonable and make me look unreasonable. What do you want from this situation, Leah? What would resolution look like for you?" "I want nothing from them. I don't want reconciliation. I don't want apologies. I don't want anything. I want them to leave me alone completely and accept that their actions have permanent consequences. And if they can't accept that, if they lose their home, then they lose their home. I didn't create their financial problems. I didn't force them to take out loans they couldn't afford. I didn't make them lie to buyers. Those were choices they made, and now they have to live with the results. I'm done being blamed for consequences they created themselves." Reverend Thomas nodded slowly, processing everything I had told him. "You're absolutely right. I can see that now clearly. I'm sorry they put me in the position of trying to convince you to compromise when you've already been far more patient than most people would have been. Will you tell them that?" "I'll tell them that they need to take full responsibility for their own situation and stop expecting you to rescue them from consequences they created themselves. I'll also suggest they seek counseling for their behavior patterns." He did exactly that. I know because Aunt Patricia called me the following week to say that my parents had an absolute meltdown during church service after Reverend Thomas spoke with them privately. They had apparently expected him to return with my agreement to help them. Instead, he told them he couldn't support their request in good conscience, and suggested they seek professional help for their patterns of manipulation and dishonesty. The fallout was immediate and widespread. Several church members who had previously called me to pressure me about the cabin reached out to apologize. They had heard the full story from Reverend Thomas, who felt obligated to set the record straight, and they were appalled at what my parents had actually done. My parents' house finally sold in August, but for $45,000 less than their original asking price. They had to accept a low-ball offer from investors who knew they were desperate. After paying off the second mortgage and their credit card debt, they barely had enough left for a deposit on a small apartment. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom place near Tristan, who was now living alone and struggling financially after Veronica left. I heard through Aunt Patricia that they were bitter and angry, blaming me for absolutely everything. According to their narrative, I had ruined their retirement, destroyed Tristan's marriage by refusing to help when they needed it, and torn apart the entire family. They told anyone who would listen that I was cruel, vindictive, and heartless. But fewer and fewer people listened. Too many people now knew the truth. Too many had seen the documentation, heard the full story, understood what they had actually done. The consequences for my family were severe and entirely fitting. My parents lost their home, their financial security, their standing in their church community, and their credibility in any future dealings. Their carefully constructed image of being devoted, selfless parents crumbled when people learned they had deliberately excluded their daughter from a wedding and then attempted to commit fraud using her property. My father could no longer present himself as a wise family patriarch, when everyone knew he had enabled and participated in cruel manipulation. Tristan lost his wife, who had finally seen through the family dysfunction and refused to be part of it any longer. He lost his financial safety net when my parents could no longer support him through their own crisis. He was forced to finally grow up and face adult responsibilities without anyone bailing him out. The golden child discovered that the pedestal he had been placed on was built on lies and manipulation, and without my parents' constant support and excuses, he had to face his own shortcomings. Looking back on the entire journey, I felt nothing but peace. The revenge I had taken wasn't elaborate or planned. It was simply refusing to be used, refusing to accept abuse disguised as family love, and letting natural consequences unfold. Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away and watching toxic people destroy themselves with their own choices. As I sat on my deck that September evening, exactly 1 year after missing the wedding, I thought about how completely my life had transformed. I had lost my parents and my brother, but I had gained something far more valuable: self-respect, dignity, peace, freedom from manipulation and guilt. The ability to live authentically without constantly worrying about disappointing people who would never truly be satisfied. The lake stretched out before me, calm and beautiful in the fading light. Jasmine was inside making dinner, and I could hear her laughing at something on her phone. This cabin, this sanctuary I had built with my grandmother's gift, had become the symbol of everything I had fought for. My right to set boundaries, my right to protect my own space and peace, my right to say no without guilt. I had been tested, pushed, manipulated, and threatened, but I had stood firm, and in standing firm, I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. Not the strength to hurt others, but the strength to protect myself. Not the strength to seek revenge, but the strength to simply refuse to be victimized. The journey of revenge had taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Let people face their own consequences. Let their lies catch up with them. Let their manipulation strategies fail. Stand still, hold your ground, and watch as karma does its work far more effectively than any elaborate scheme ever could.